Growing up, I remember I always had to memorize all the random names and dates I had to remember in history class. I used to wonder, why do I have to memorize names and dates of all these things that happened so long ago? What does that have to do with me now? And how is this information ever going to matter to my everyday life? Now, of course, over time, I've learned to appreciate history. It's cool to know who was here before us. But when I first had to learn it, it felt irrelevant. Today we're going to talk about something that has the potential to feel the same way. We're talking about the Bible and reading the Bible. In this series, we're talking about how in order to get to know God, we need to make a habit out of connecting with Him. The last time we met, we talked about learning to see God as a God who we can have a relationship with, and not just as some God who makes rules that we have to follow or history that we have to memorize. And we said that connection with God, like real life-changing connection, is a way better goal to go after than just making sure that we don't get in trouble with God. Now, when we were in a worldwide lockdown because of the pandemic, wasn't it really difficult not seeing each other? Wasn't it challenging not being able to spend time in the same place at the same time with your friends or family? And as hard as that was, at least we had the luxury of being able to Zoom or FaceTime or call each other. Unfortunately, we don't have those same luxuries when it comes to God. He is always present, but we can't see Him, so it takes a lot of faith to trust that He's there. The good news is there are things we can do to help us get to know God better. One thing that we can do is read the Bible. If you've been in church for a long time, that may be the answer you were expecting to hear. If you're new to this whole church thing, you may be wondering what the Bible is. Some people refer to it as God's Word, and it's a collection of books that were written by a bunch of people over a span of a lot of years. In a lot of ways, it can feel like reading a history book. Like me growing up in school, I would wonder what this historical information had to do with my life in the present. The Bible can feel the same way. Sometimes it might seem like the Bible is irrelevant to life right now. And on top of that, anything written that long ago can be pretty difficult to understand today. Some of it is pretty confusing. Some of the language doesn't make sense to us today, and when it records this interaction between Jesus and the Pharisees and Sadducees, you might be like, wait a second, who in the world are those people? Now, that's the New Testament, which is the less ancient portion of the Bible that records the life after Jesus came to earth. The Old Testament, which tells the story of life before Jesus came to earth, is even more difficult to understand. Sometimes it may seem like the Bible is confusing. And honestly, sometimes it's not an easy read. Some parts of the Bible go on. And if you find yourself in specific sections of the Bible, you better not be laying on your couch or on your bed, or you'll be asleep within a few minutes. Because sometimes it seems like the Bible is boring. Not only does it not sound like fun, some parts of it don't even sound that interesting. But in the church world, there's a lot of hype around reading the Bible. The preacher preaches about it, people talk about how it has changed their lives and post pictures of their Bible studies. People tell you that you should read it, but if it's irrelevant, confusing, and boring, why? And how? And where would you even start? It seems like a lot of work without much payoff. Now, maybe you've even tried before and it didn't really do anything for you. You didn't get any magical answers to your problems or feel relief for your anxiety. Sometimes it might seem like reading the Bible doesn't make a difference. I think what we'll talk about today can be a game changer for you, not only when it comes to your view of the Bible, but also in your ability to connect with God. So, how does reading an ancient book help us connect with God? Like I said, the Bible is divided into two parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. But even within those pieces, the books can be very different in their style of writing. For example, I want to look at a passage that comes out of a book of poetry in the Old Testament. The book is called Psalms. It's basically a collection of songs and poems that people of that time would have repeated together. It's kind of like the songs that we sing and memorize here at church. This particular book is the longest book in the Bible. A lot of it was written by King David, who is the most famous ancient king in the Bible. And if you ever read the account of his life, I promise you, it is not boring. As for this passage that we're going to look at today, we're not exactly sure who wrote it, but it's the first verse in the book of Psalms. Check it out. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers. In short, he's basically saying, don't hang out with people who are a bad influence. We all get this. Let's say that you hang out with people who compulsively steal things. Eventually, you may find yourself in trouble. The better option is to not hang out with them or give them a no stealing when we're together rule. The writer is saying that the person who does these things, who avoids hanging out with bad influences, is blessed. Another word for this is happy. You could also say more at peace. No matter what you say, the end result is the same. You are better off this way. There are benefits to doing it this way. For our purposes, we'll say happy. But think of this as a different kind of happy than you feel when McDonald's gives you a large fry instead of a small. It's bigger than that. So the author is saying, happy is the person who avoids the company of bad influences. Sounds simple enough. The writer keeps going on. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. So now the writer is making a contrast. To be happy, don't hang around bad influences. And to be happy, do learn and think about things that God cares about. People who focus on God's word make it a part of their lives and hang on to it. And you are blessed. They're happy. They are better for it because they have it in their brains at the time that they need it. When we read and focus on God's word, it helps guide us toward a more full life. Another way to put it is, God's word changes us as we think about it. The writer continues, that person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. In other words, that person, the one who is planted in God's word, is growing and full of life. They're like a tree planted by a stream, connected to the source of life. They're taking in water to help them grow. They're connected to what is true about how they should view life, themselves, and others. It's not that anyone who follows God's word is financially rich or successful all the time. That's not what we mean by blessed. They are, however, setting themselves up to win. Why? Because God's word gives them perspective, wisdom, and guidance. When we read, study, and meditate on and memorize God's word, we live like a tree connected to a source of water. We stay connected to God. Our minds stay connected to the things that He wants us to focus on and think about what He says about us and how to love others. It's one of the ways that God speaks to us. So one of the ways that you could think about the Bible is a way to listen to God. And as we do that, we learn more about Him. Think of it this way. Listening to God helps us know Him better. And as we get to know Him better, we become better at navigating our lives. It's not that everything works out for us the way that we want it to. It's just that we're more closely connected to the source, God, who helps us go after the right thing and make decisions that give us more peace and less regret. Also, reading the Bible gives our minds a better chance of being filled with God's truth instead of filling the space in our minds with lies that we're all so prone to believe. According to this passage, it's the time spent learning God's word, studying it and memorizing it and thinking about it or meditating on it that sets people up for success. That sets these people on the path in life that makes life better and makes them better at life. It's not a promise that life will be trouble-free or easy all the time. Instead, it's inviting us to something much better. a life where we're capable of withstanding challenges and difficulty. When we live connected to God by studying and learning and memorizing His Word, we live like a tree connected to a source of water and life and goodness. This all sounds good, but how do we incorporate it into our lives? Well, like most things, it takes time and practice. If there are people you know who seem to get a lot out of reading the Bible, it's probably because they've been doing it for a while. They've had days where reading the Bible was confusing. There were probably periods of time when they didn't feel like they got anything out of it, but they stuck with it. You and I can't think of this as something that magically happens overnight. It's a habit that takes time to develop. So in order for this to become a habit, we have to put in the time. Think more in terms of quality than quantity. It's not a contest to see who can read the longest each day. Even a short amount of time is good if it's focused. Remember, this is a way to get to know God better. Getting to know God was intended to be enjoyable. It was never meant to be a chore or an assignment. It's a way for us to discover new things about the character of God. It's an avenue for us to learn about the kind of world that God envisions for us. The Bible is a story that is bigger than us. It shows us how to live a deeper life with more purpose than we could discover on our own. It's tough to make something a habit if we don't enjoy it, so you and I should do our best to enjoy our time listening to God through His Word. Finally, I want you to make reading the Bible and listening for God as easy as possible for yourself, especially at first. You can check out the YouVersion Bible app available on your phone for free or online at Bible.com. Not only is the entire Bible available, but in the app, you can search reading plans that offer short devotions to help you get started listening to God through His Word. Anywhere you have a phone or the internet, you have access to God's Word, so take advantage of it. Whatever you do, find a plan that is realistic and manageable for you. Listening to God helps us know Him better. Imagine if you felt confident that God was speaking into your life and your circumstance. Wouldn't it be amazing to know that the Creator of the universe was talking to you? And then think about how cool it would be if in the midst of you hearing from Him, you also got to know Him better. Wouldn't you feel a stronger sense of peace and even confidence? I think that you'll be glad you did.